Obviously, Hillary Clinton isn't running again, for all we know. As of now, she's not running. But CNN is still running and still doing their coverage, if you want to call it that, under the same neoliberal, propagandish, corporate cronyism playbook. And I bring with you today, before I get to this segment, a copy of Noam Chomsky, Media Control. This is a little free promotion for the legendary Noam Chomsky. And I want to read a short little sentence to you because I think it sets up this CNN segment very well. And again, Media Control, Noam Chomsky. So, one conception of democracy has it that a democratic society is one in which the public has the means to participate in some meaningful way in the management of their own affairs, and the means of information are open and free. If you look up democracy in the dictionary, you'll get a definition something like that. That is one definition of democracy. An alternative conception of democracy is that the public must be barred from managing of their own affairs, and that the means of information must be kept narrowly and rigidly controlled. That may sound like an odd conception of democracy, but it's important to understand that is the prevailing conception. So that is the legendary Noam Chomsky. I'm reading you a bedtime story at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. So I want to show you some of this CNN segment, which this morning, Bernie Sanders got testy with them, and I don't blame him because it was just ridiculous framing after ridiculous framing. So I'm going to play some of this for you, and then I'm going to cut in, cut out, because I think Bernie Sanders shamed CNN. Let's take a look.
From union healthcare, from a union negotiated healthcare plan to Medicare for all, those savings would have to be passed along to those workers who belong to that union.
Right.
How would you explain to non-union Americans why they should not also receive a benefit for giving up their private insurance if, for instance, theirs saves money as well going to Medicare for all?
Well, they are going to receive an enormous benefit. The overwhelming majority of the American people are going to pay significantly less for better health care under Medicare for all. Right now, you got 87 million people who are uninsured, who are underinsured, 500,000 people who go bankrupt every year because they cannot pay their outrageous medical bills. You got 30,000 people who are dying. People are spending 10, 15, 20% of their limited incomes on health care.
But they won't get the higher wages or the benefits that union members would get.
Wait.
No, I hear what you're saying, but you're saying union members.
Well, excuse me, what Medicare for all will do is lower the cost of health care for the overwhelming majority of Americans. That's how they benefit. No premiums, no co-payments, no deductibles, no out-of-pocket expenses. Every American, virtually every American.
But a non-union worker, unlike a union worker under your...
So, oh my God, I love that. First of all, for any viewers watching that are members of the tribe, my friends in the Jewish community, this reminds me of my grandma, may she rest in peace, Mamo, who used to say, "Excuse me, I'm speaking, excuse me." Love Bernie Sanders, and I love that wonderful Jewish accent. What's amazing to me about this, and by the way, for those of you that don't know, how this whole thing came up was there has been some concerns among labor unions. There's been some concerns among labor unions that, labor unions, of course, have fought for decades and decades and decades, basically for scraps, because they've been more and more squeezed by these corporations that are allowed to do whatever the hell they want to union members. They've been making union members pay more and more into their health care year after year, cutting back their wages, cutting back their benefits, and because the unions are spineless, because the unions, frankly, are still working in a domestic playbook instead of an international playbook, they have basically said, okay, well, we'll take anything. I mean, if you're gonna keep taking away from us, we give up. We'll just take whatever. That's been a lot of the labor union movement in America over the last 20, 30 years. And of course, there's been a huge union bashing. We're going to talk about the death of David Koch, which, frankly, sorry, I'm not in mourning. Sorry for his family, not sorry for America. This is a good day for America. Sorry to say it. Some people might not like that real talk, but that's the truth. I'm not going to celebrate the Kochs. So basically, Bernie Sanders has been, political candidates. There's a difference between just, moonwalking with the wind, like Mitt Romney, Hillary Clinton, Kamala for the people of Wall Street, Harris, or Bernie Sanders, who's saying, okay, well, there's some legitimate concerns among people in labor unions who healthcare is a very, very sensitive topic. They fight and they have fought to get decent healthcare from their labor unions. I don't know if it's so decent if you keep having to pay more and more of your paycheck into that healthcare. And Bernie Sanders, instead, he hasn't changed anything in his Medicare for All plan. He hasn't changed a word. All he has said is, as president, I am going to make companies who have workers in labor unions give back some of the money that those workers in the unions have given away. So if you're a labor union person under Bernie Sanders, if you have basically had to give up, let's say, if you instead of getting a $3 an hour raise this year as part of your collectively bargained agreement with the company you work for to get better health care, that $3 an hour wage that you conceded to get that better health care, Bernie Sanders is now working to get the wages that workers in the unions gave up to get that to them. That's not changing his Medicare for All plan, of course. That is doing something on the side for union workers. It has absolutely nothing to do with his Medicare for All plan. But what CNN is doing is what they basically have done in turn, what my friend Noam Chomsky says, propaganda. They are basically trying to, muddy the waters here. And this is what they do for free public college, for example. So free public college, which is Bernie Sanders' plan that he's been championing forever, they say, well, we don't want to pay for wealthy people's kids to get free public college. So that's why free public college for Bernie. So 98% of the people will benefit, but because 2% of the people might have access to free public college and they're from wealthy families, oh, Bernie's a hypocrite. This is the red herrings that the corporate media, particularly CNN, like to throw in. So here you have the CNN anchor basically saying, well, why should these... let me continue with what she's saying, because the argument is so intellectually dishonest and so ridiculous. I'll let her speak for herself.
Their employer sees a savings, they would not be guaranteed to have higher wages or benefits to realize those savings. Why not?
But the difference is, I'll tell you why not. Because union workers gave up wage benefits over the years in order to pay for health care, and non-union workers did not. That's the difference. But at the end of the day, the vast majority of the American people, workers and non-union workers, union workers and non-union workers, will benefit under a Medicare for All. And by the way, under Medicare for All, will cap what any American pays for prescription drugs at $200 a year. We're going to take on the pharmaceutical industry. The function of healthcare, Brianna, is not to allow the healthcare industry, as they did last year, to make $100 billion in profit, while so many of our people are uninsured, underinsured, and paying more than they can afford to pay.
Several of your 2020 rivals and their campaigns have been attacking you over this sweetener for union members. So how do you respond to critics who say that this is special treatment to a voting bloc?
Very few people have been attacking me. I think one candidate in the media picks up on it. Again, we have not changed one word of our Medicare for All system. No deductibles, no copayments. The vast majority of the American people save money. The issue, again, as I've just said, is that if you are a worker in a union shop and the company says, well, we're going to offer you a 3% wage increase, but you know what? You're going to have to pay, you're going to lose 4% in your health care. Your deductible is going up, your premium is going up. Those workers have given up wage increases in order to retain the health care that they have. Those are the workers we are reaching out to in this, what we're doing right now. But we have not changed one word in our Medicare for All program, which is gaining more and more support for the American people. The American people understand that we have a dysfunctional system in which so many people are uninsured, underinsured, and which we spend twice as much per person on health care as do the people of Canada or any other industrialized nation. Now, it is true. We're going to take on hundreds of millions of dollars from the healthcare industry in 30-second TV ads. They're going to distort what I'm trying to do. They're going to demonize me personally. But at the end of the day, the American people will go forward in guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right, just as every other major country does.
So what was amazing about that, and you saw the smirch on her face. Oh, she was not happy. She was not happy that Breonna Kyler, with Bernie Sanders pushing back. Excuse me, because the framing, and again, if you have loved ones and you have pictures all over your apartment or home or wherever you live, the framing of this is so preposterous. And it starts with Kamala Harris, who, as I show you, is now on the average of the polls, down at 7.4%. Her campaign is literally sinking like the Titanic, no pun intended. Her campaign is sinking like the Titanic. So campaigns, when they're sinking like the Titanic, are going to go after anyone that, if they could put a dent in that candidate, maybe they'll rise. So her campaign thought, let's go after Bernie. Let's make it seem like he's switching, he's switching on Medicare for all, or he's moonwalking on Medicare for all, which will then, neuter his argument against us that Kamala Harris moved and moonwalked faster than Michael Jackson away from Medicare for all, which she did. She did moonwalk very, very far from Medicare for all. And as you can see, all her moonwalking, all her, her plan that, sets Medicare for all after 10 years, a phase-in period, her plan that is called Medicare for all, but it's not actually run by the government. It's run by private insurance companies. Apparently Americans, or, people living in the United Corporations of America, apparently they're not for somebody who has no conviction, who isn't boldly for anything. She's moonwalking. She didn't run on Medicare for all when she ran for senator in California. She signed on to Bernie's plan because as the political winds were moving, so does Kamala Harris. And now she's trying to fudge, and this is how CNN and all these outlets are picking this up. Kamala Harris's campaign is feeding it to them. Bernie Sanders is wavering on Medicare for all. What CNN is trying to do is basically, it's not about the actual issue. It's about making Bernie Sanders seem like he's actually not a man of conviction, and make it seem, or make people doubt, oh, well, Bernie's starting to move away from Medicare for all. You heard the term that she made, the sweetheart deal for unions. Well, call me unusual. I'd rather my president be making sweetheart deals, if you want to call it that, for workers and union members, and doing a little something extra for them to comfort their concern over a change in health care, which they have fought hard for in their collective bargaining. I'd rather President Sanders or any president be making accommodations for union members than for people on K Street and lobbyists and Wall Street bankers and fossil fuel sleazebags and big pharma and Silicon Valley and real estate developers. Wouldn't you? Isn't it refreshing? But to CNN and the other outlets that picked up this absurdity, Bernie Sanders is moonwalking. Bernie Sanders is starting, is changing his Medicare for all plan. It's absurd. Absurd. And frankly, I'm kind of happy that Bernie Sanders, during this interview, cut her off. I think Bernie Sanders, frankly, and maybe this is just my style, has been a little too kind to these CNN and MSNBC and Washington Post and New York Times people. I don't want Bernie Sanders to start borrowing from Donald Trump, don't get me wrong, but I don't think Bernie Sanders should be calling it fake news or any of this stuff. That's authoritarian stuff, and that's dangerous. We believe in a freedom of press, even if the press is awful. However, one thing that worked for Donald Trump that I think can work for Bernie Sanders, if you should attack press that is not doing journalism. You should call out press when they are framing arguments in a disingenuous and, frankly, false light. Now, if CNN wants to pretend, if CNN wants to drop this phony baloney that they're neutral and just say, we are the network of the establishment, but we want all comers on. You see, my thing with Fox News, for example, my issue has always been not that they're conservative, that they always pretended to be fair and balanced. Just say, we're a conservative network, but we want all viewpoints on, and we'll have a debate on ideas. If CNN did that, I wouldn't be doing segments on CNN. But when CNN pretends to be this neutral arbiter who just, everybody, it doesn't have a horse in the race. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statusquo.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statusquo.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.